Hello from the Hill Physic House. I'm Site Manager Megan.
And I'm Site Manager Tim. Today we're going to focus on letter writing as the primary form of correspondence in the late 1700s.
In this current age of social distancing, we've been thinking quite a bit about how important letter writing was during times of crisis, before the invention of the telephone.
We're going to primarily focus on the correspondence of Dr. Philip Syng Physic and the family of Henry Hill, and we'll be reading some letters that they wrote.
Let's step into Dr. Physic's breakfast parlor, and we can talk a little bit more about his letters. In this current age of social distancing, I'm sure your screen time has been a bit increased. I know mine sure has. Due to the modern conveniences that we enjoy, such as the internet and smartphones, we're able to communicate with our loved ones at a moment's notice. However, in the late 1700s, that wasn't the case. To give you an idea, it would take a letter around 14 days to travel from Philadelphia to New York City. Here are all of the necessary implements. This silver-plated desk set has an area for your ink and your quill pen over here. In this container, there would have been sand. That would have been used to blot your ink after writing. This is a goose quill pen, which was very commonly used. In order to prepare it, you would have soaked it in warm water. Then you would have cut it at a 45-degree angle. After that, you add a small center slit around a ½ inch, which aids in the flow of ink as you write. Once you had finished penning your letter, being careful to be quite tidy and to avoid smudging, you would have finished it off with some wax and, of course, the family seal. In 1798, when yellow fever was ravaging Philadelphia, two men very important to the story of this house lived in Philadelphia. A very ill Henry Hill lay in this house suffering of yellow fever, while not too far away, a determined Dr. Physic was on the front lines of the epidemic, treating patients that were overwhelming the hospital's capacity. Here is an excerpt of a letter written on September 7, 1798, by Dr. Physic to William Jones, Chairman of the Board of Health.
I very much fear that the time required to finish the building will prevent it from being of much use this year, and as more room is absolutely necessary immediately, it will be proper to have huts or a long shed put up in the roughest way. If these cannot be made quickly, tents should be sent out and put up, because some of our rooms are so crowded that the patients suffer exceedingly from bad air. Then there is a morass near the hospital, which might be drained very easily by digging a well in the middle of it, and by having this done would save us from breathing a great deal of very noxious air. Dr. Rush, who came to the hospital this morning, has mentioned and very strongly advised an immediate attention to these circumstances. I remain with this protest.
Dr. Physic advocated for his patients, and he worked tirelessly to aid Philadelphians plagued by yellow fever. At this point, I'd love to share more of Dr. Physic's letters with you, but unfortunately he did not permit his son-in-law, Dr. Jacob Randolph, to publish them after he died. What Randolph does provide in his memorial to Dr. Physic's life is an interesting look into Physic's personality as a letter writer.
As a letter writer, he was exceedingly exemplary and peculiar. I regret very much that I have not the privilege of inserting a few of his letters into this memoir, in order to let them speak for themselves. His letters in general were remarkably brief and pithy. Having said all that he considered necessary for the elucidation of his subject, he invariably stopped. I have frequently known him to reply to a letter of 3 or 4 pages closely written, and about as many lines. He was excessively annoyed at receiving and becoming obliged to read letters of an unmeaning and unnecessary length. The same thing took place with respect to books. I have often heard him complain that this was very hard. He was obliged to read through a volume of 200 or 300 pages in order to get at ideas which might have been embodied in 10 or 20. We brought you up to Henry Hill's bedroom to share some of his family's correspondence during difficult times. Henry Hill built this house in 1786, and it is in this bedroom where he died of yellow fever. His sister, Margaret Morris, writes in 1798 of the epidemic in this way.
I have received my beloved sister's letter, and desire to be truly thankful that your family are at present well. It seems as if the dreadful fever now prevailing in Philadelphia would wholly depopulate that once flourishing city. The accounts daily coming to us of the malignancy of the fever looks as if it was indeed the plague. I saw a person today who left the city this morning. He said Dr. Griffiths told him it was bad in Walnut Street and in the neighborhood, as in any part of the town, and that his valuable maid Polly, who had lived with him many years, lay dead in his house, and that himself was so saturated with the disease that he could not attend his patients, having upwards of 60. Dr. Wister is also ill, and Gibson, Brother Wells' best clerk at the bank, dead. Several have died here who came from Philadelphia well, and a son of James Sterling, who was pretty well yesterday, is now thought to be at the point of death.
Before this, when Henry Hill was 22, he lost his brother. Upon hearing the news, he penned a letter to his uncle in 1755.
My dear uncle, we received your packet, which brought the most afflicting account of my poor dear brother's departure. We had great reason to prepare for the worst some time before, which guarded us a little against it. We have the consolation that nothing was omitted for his recovery, that he was graciously favored with a long warning, and, what gives the greatest comfort, that he was resigned and left the world cheerfully. We should not then repine that he is happier, but oh, my uncle, I cannot help feeling my own loss to the quick. He had so true a heart and loved his parents and relations so sincerely, was so humane and a good friend. His modesty and love of me never suffered him to hint at one obligation he conferred on me. When I parted with him at Madeira, he leaned on my shoulder and said, with tears in his eyes, "My Harry, you have not known me long enough. When you think of me, consider me at least as one that desires to be your best friend."
Communication is an essential human impulse, and in times of crisis, it becomes even more important. Let's remind ourselves to be thankful that we can reach out to family and friends with ease during this time of social distancing. We hope you enjoyed getting a peek into the personal writings that affected the lives of the two men that once owned this house, and the fascinating lives they lived through its beautiful halls.